Today we're going to be talking about the best Barbarian build that no one's talking about. Absolutely no one. As we can see on the screen, tier 98 Nightmare Dungeon. This is with me having 1 day's experience in the build. Now, I don't know how this went so far under the radar. This has been the most cleared Nightmare tier 100 and the most efficient, best clear of Nightmare tier 100 build in the game. And it's probably going to prove, I mean, it's early, right? There's still more builds to be discovered, but as of right now, there's no build better than Double Swing across the entire board. As far as speed farming, it's slightly slower than Whirlwind. It is slightly slower than Whirlwind, so Whirlwind is going to win there. But as far as pushing, there's no build close to this one. I even did something nuts and went into an abandoned mineworks, which you're going to see gameplay of later, at tier 100. Now, if you don't know about that dungeon, there's a ton of ranged mobs in there. And I mean, I did fail it. I did not expect to go in on the first day with the build and just clear a tier 100. That's kind of crazy. So we have a lot to talk about with this build here. And like I said, this is crazy, crazy strong. A lot of gameplay to go over, so let's dive into it. What up team, it is MurderInc. We are talking about Double Swing Barbarian. As we can see, pumping right now. I mean, our survivability is crazy. And we're still doing crazy numbers here. Let's kind of go ahead and see if we can find our first elite of the day. Even though, I mean, normal mobs are pretty dangerous, especially when they're ranged and putting effects in the ground. The best thing and the greatest thing I like about this build is you feel like a barbarian. It's almost like if you go into water that's out, I don't know, shoulder high, and you're like treading your way through the water, that's what this build feels like. Except for you're treading your way through mobs, just slicing them to absolute bits here. So let's see if we can find a... Okay, I know this is a scary part of the dungeon. If you know about Cultist Refuge, once you kill all of the slay all enemies, a behemoth of an elite is going to spawn with suppressor around it and any other affix. As you can see, my health's getting crazy low here, so I'm scared for sure. We have this aura here, and I'm minding that there is a shrine right next to me. You know I'm going to use this for sure. Looking that I have 2 potions left, guaranteed that I use this shrine for this. So let's skip ahead here. I noticed the shrine. I'm going to kill as many as I can, then run back. And if I remember correctly, this boss is going to spawn. I guess I won't skip ahead. This boss is going to spawn and immediately teleport. I don't know if I realized it in this or not. I'm not sure if I died to this. I don't think I did. I'm pretty sure I remembered while going through this and had my challenging shout up for when I did in fact spawn the like mega elite. Not all elites are the same. Some are significantly stronger than others. So here he is. He's going to teleport right there. So I did survive here, and you're going to see how I survived because I have crazy stats. But I have 1 potion left, 1 potion and a dream, and shadow damage is on me. You can see I'm scared. I'm hitting the potion button. I know I have nothing here, and look at this, no health. We just said, you know what, I'm a barbarian, I don't care. Ran straight to his face. Did have the shrine, of course. We had a crit and the shrine proc, and we ended up executing the mob. So that was stressful for sure. This was, like I said, this is one of the first, I don't know, I got crazy and said, let me record this just in case, because I saw tons of concepts on Double Swing already. Okay, so here's the 100. This is the one, this is where it was like, now I have to give a huge shout out to Reich, hold on, let me get the name correctly, who had stopped and was done. Okay, so Reichser, huge shout out to Reichser. He was done playing this season, had a ton of sigil dust, because I kept farming for sigil dust and kept getting reduced damage on crits, reduced close damage. Nobody wants that. But look at this. I have the Drifting Shade, which for this build and for most melee builds that aren't mobile like Whirlwind, horrendous. Because you can be in a perfect setup ready to just decimate every single mob in front of you, and then that stupid pool starts exploding, so you have to move out of the way. And we're going to go over the mechanics of the build, of course, here. This is a very rage intense build, which is why Warbinger is actually going to be good for this build. So as we can see here, 100 don't care. Going into a mass group of mobs here, you might be thinking that these mobs don't hit very hard. They do. They hit very hard, but you can build this build so tanky, and you will sacrifice on numbers. I know the 12 million DPS thing isn't going to be in this part of the clip, but it's going to be for the clip that I'm going to show you in the overall build I'm going to give you. This is going to be a pushing variant, but still 1.8 million per swing 2 times a second. That's still what? That's almost 2, 4, 6, 8 million DPS in a 100 nightmare tier. Like, hello? But we don't want to see these normal mobs. Where, I mean, this is another crazy pull. Here, look at this mob density. Imagine doing this in a 100 and being like, oh, this is fine. So we have this. Let's find our first rare champion. Or I keep calling them rares. Let's find the elite. Again, I'm just pulling obscene amounts that most builds would fall over. Okay, so here's the elite. I knew I had taken too much, and I was like, okay, here's the first limit test against an elite with this build. How are we gonna do? He has very dangerous affixes. He has the pylons, which shred pretty much every single build here, and look at the mob density on top of that. So I had to kite them back, made sure everything was squared off. 2 million swings just back to back. The key thing with the resource fury management here is if you're hitting stunned enemies, you can see my fury, it just keeps going back up because you gain fury based on the skill talents we take for double swing, which is the key here. You're stunning often. I'm using double mace here. The double mace is going to be the pushing variant. I have a magnum opus version that I think is going to be better for the entire player base that I made, and you're going to be stunned at the, I mean, look at these numbers. It's just so much fun. You feel like a barbarian. You're not spinning. You're not Hammer the Ancients trying to clip the corner to cheese damage. You're just in their face, stacking pure survivability and just smashing. That's what we do. Barbarian smash. So we're going to re-engage with the elite here in just a second. Okay, here we go. I kind of missed the beginning here, but just absolutely shredding this elite. Watch when it gets injured. Watch its health just go down. So here my health gets low. I'm starting to freak out a little bit. Like, okay, I gotta watch the floor, watch the drifting shades, watch the pylons. This is very involved gameplay. And watch what happens. This is my first death, and you're gonna see why. I get so excited that I killed the elite here. I didn't move from the elite's explosion into the spiderlings. It's just what happened. There was a drifting shade. I was stuck in between the pools that were dropped here, and yeah, I don't know. These things just happen. These things do in fact just happen here. And of course, I think this is the second elite we're gonna see here today. Yeah, the second elite whenever it gets into range here. And so all of this is good. His affixes aren't too bad. I don't know if that's vampiric or not. I'd have to scroll over it. Or teleporting, explosive, and summoner. Okay, so it's not the worst. The summoning, or the teleporting rather, that can be an issue if you're caught with not all of your DRs up. And I mean, look at that. Even the tanky build is swinging up to 2.6 million per weapon. You're hitting with both weapons. Keep that in mind. So this is per weapon. So like I said, this is a very involved gameplay here. If you want something brainless, this isn't the build. There's a lot of thought process. There's like 3 million crit here. I mean, what more do you want? What more do you want? This is such a cool build. The range is short. That is one downside that I will not deny at all. And so this time you can see I dashed out. I learned the second time, don't get excited about killing an elite just because it's a Nightmare Dungeon 100. And like a suicide one to try. This part, I wouldn't say this part's as bad. Where it gets bad, I'm going to show you. And you will notice that there's an artillery shrine to the left of me. Why I didn't just take that, I don't know. It's kind of installed into me to not do that for showcases, but realistically, if you're in a Nightmare 100, you're taking the artillery shrines and you're just deleting the map, right? Deleting the map as much as you could. It probably would have set me up to actually clear this, because I did fail, and you're going to see exactly why I failed, because, and there's a reason why no one's doing this in Barbarian. This is like a suicide mission unless you get perfect shrine placement. So this pull right here in a nutshell is the exact reason why this Nightmare dungeon is in fact a nightmare for Barbarians. You have ranged enemies, which means you're not getting close damage reduction, and we have no distant damage reduction, or you shouldn't at least. So they're just going to be pumping you. Now these mobs aren't a big deal. What are a big deal are the wraiths, and I have to proc that. So these wraiths here, they fire homing missiles, and they are technically dodgeable if you're outside of the initial path, but with drifting shades dodging the homing missiles, it's just such a difficult thing to execute here. So do I die here? I'm not sure if I die here or not. This is like a very stressful gameplay for any Barbarian. Yes, you could take Steel Grasp, but if you look at my skills here, we have the 3 shouts, we have Iron Skin required, you need Iron Skin, Frenzy, you need Frenzy, and then you have Double Swing. Now, dropping any type of, I mean, I suppose you can drop Warcry, but then you might start running into some cooldown issues, which you never want to do. So all of this right now, while it's difficult gameplay, I didn't really struggle until one thing happened, which is just part of this dungeon, which makes it not appealing for people pushing, especially if you're a Barbarian. For ranged classes, you'll have no issue with pushing in a dungeon like this, but we're going to see, I don't know, where's it going to happen? It's my first death that happens outside of that dumb mistake. Okay, here it is, so let's go. I don't want to go, I think it's the next pull I do, so we'll just watch this kind of boring gameplay as I walk up to it. Okay, Drifting Shade probably almost killed me there. So this right here, look what happens. 3 elites spawn out of nowhere. I have my DR up, my cooldowns are up, and I just get destroyed. This is the main problem here. If there was a way to preemptively proc this and then kite it backwards, I would have had a much easier time with this dungeon. But this is what makes this dungeon so difficult here. So what I ended up having to do was, I had to inch close, gather threat from like what I just did here, and then pull them backwards and start going slowly and slowly and slowly. And even still, I mean, this is still rather difficult because damage resistance aura, I have no way to group up these mobs to me. I have the shade where if I stay into it for too long, it's going to do probably 60% of my health here. So not good, not good, not good at all here. But overall, the survivability has been really strong for this build, unless you decide to proc 3 ranged elites with 3 mods each on them. And this is my attempt. I don't know if I die here. I think I might. I'm having a hard time. The positioning with this build takes some getting used to, that's for sure here. So I have to dodge, and there's another elite, so it was actually a 4 elite pack, which is just mental. Do I die here? I'm getting close. The shadow damage is crazy. The drifting shade. So the next attempt I do, you can see me take down these elites here, which was a very difficult thing to do. They're constantly backpedaling. They're just firing these homing missiles in your face, and I can't even position the way I want to because of the nightmare drifting shades that will one-shot me if I stand in them. So there's just so much working against me in this dungeon, but it was still so much fun. So much fun. So I decided I have to just let this guy wail on me and run over to stun him as much as I can, kind of bounce back and forth. I'm pretty sure I commit. No, I don't commit to this guy. At some point, I'm going to go to the elite right here and just commit and just nuke him all the way down. Yeah, I think it is right here. And look what happened. As soon as I committed to one of them and stopped bouncing back and forth, I died. So I didn't show the remaining of that clip, but I ended up killing a few more elite packs, and then I got to the, I think the 2 out of 3. So you have to kill 3 archers. They're really easy for some reason. That dungeon did not balance very well. So the objective elites that are supposed to be the Giga elites, they're easy. So I killed 2 of those, and then on my way to the last one, what happened? One of the surprise elite mobs spawned again with another 4 elites on top of the one I just engaged, and Nightmare Dungeon failed. But the first time I ever attempted it, I wasn't expecting to clear it, so that was not bad at all. Now, one thing and one issue I ran into is, like I said, I had someone, Riker, not Riker, yeah, we know who Riker, Reichzer, I gotta get the name right. So when he was sharing me these maps, I was doing it wrong. So I was actually scaling all of the content you're seeing to 2 players instead of 1, even though he left. Because usually when you scale it and you share a map to somebody and leave, it teleports you out and then back in, so you're in a single playered instance. I could be wrong on how that works, but I noticed when I was trying some 93 maps, they were doing more damage than the 100 maps. And even this tier 82, it was definitely not tier 82 quality. We didn't have too much struggle here though. This is not the build I would recommend for something this low. You might be thinking tier 82 isn't necessarily low, but I definitely prefer going for more damage and less survivability unless I'm doing those high 90s and high all the way up to 100 clears with a build like this. I would prefer more damage to just get these guys out of the way as quick as possible, then move forward. Now this dungeon is pretty boring. There is a lot of danger, of course, with the, I think it's the flies. Where are the flies? Yeah, so the poison from these flies, or their projectiles, they hurt. If you don't get rid of them and you just stand in all of them, you're going to be taking tons and tons of damage. So you have to, again, engaging gameplay where you have to always be aware of what's around you here. So the only thing I want to cover is the really lethal elite that a lot of people struggle with. Here's a pretty simple pack. We've kind of already seen gameplay similar to this before. Okay, so this guy. If you've never fought or done the Golron slums, you know that the mob I'm about to fight, when he starts spawning his mirrored copies with suppressor, if you get stunned and don't have an unstoppable, you're insta dead. So I knew this going into this because it was a, in my opinion at least, a double scale. And look at my health. It drops all the way down to practically 0. I know the play button's in the way here, so I had to dash out last second there and just secure that kill. So this is the main pushing build. I will have 2 build variants for you guys. And from there, there is one more footage I want to show you of the build I'm going to showcase today. That's going to be for, I guess, the majority of player base. I wanted to show this because you get to see core mechanics much better in higher dungeons, right? If you're just showing tier 50s, 60s, you're breezing through it. Any build can do that. So here we are in a tier 73. This is the build using the Magnum Opus weapon. So we're scaling much more damage with this build here. 4.7 million damage swing. Like I said, you can do this. You can cast 2 hits twice per second when you get the crit proc, which is just nuts. So this is almost like too much damage at this point. You have to constantly dash to each opponent, making sure you get them down. I mean, this wasn't the best dungeon to pick, but I'm so low on the sigil dust, I have to work with what I have in front of me here. So we're doing this, we're pumping big numbers, of course, like 4 million, 3 million. These numbers may look impressive, but wait until I show you my gear. So I'm going to show maybe a little bit more gameplay here. Okay, we got this. We just demolished an elite here. Like I said, tier 73, nothing too impressive, but I just want to show you the slight difference in gameplay. It gets faster because they're just one-shotting everything. 4 million here, 4 million there. GG, easy stuff. So we're going to do this fast. The porcupines they're annoying. Everyone knows they're annoying. They can do a massive, massive amount of damage to you, but with the stunning we have, the high damage, you just dash to them, cast 1 double swing, and they're pretty much dead there. So we got big numbers. So let's talk about big numbers as I launch my Diablo game. Not launch, but like get inside the game here. Okay, so we're loading in here. And this is going to be the build that I'm going to present to everybody because I think this is the most properly modified build for the majority player base. And in case I haven't mentioned this, I guess I should right now. Double Swing has cleared the most amount of Nightmare 100 dungeons of all of them. In their runs, they have killed elites, killed bosses, and cleared them the fastest. So as of right now, Double Swing is the best Nightmare 100 build in the game for Barbarians. Can something be discovered later on? Of course. We're new to this and people don't really know the full extent of Barbarians, so let's talk about this build here. Magnum Opus, like I said, I'm using here, and we don't have any Shout on the Ring. I'm using Expectant. I don't have Limitless Rage. Just think about that for a second. I am missing a 60x multiplier, and I'm critting for 4.7 million damage. Let that sink in for a second. Which means this build, in theory, with quick napkin math, can be doing, like I said, 12 million DPS is going to be the average for this. That will go up to above 16 with that extra multiplier. And if I swap around some of these weapon enchants to be more ideal. So let's go through this. Basic skill gives you damage reduction on top of the already built-in damage reduction with Frenzy. You want to keep up 3 stacks all of the time. That gives you a massive defensive layer. My health crazy here because you can run health on rings instead of resource generation. So if you want to make this build, you can keep resource generation on for sure. I don't have a second ring with health, but more health, more survivability, you are doing great. You may be thinking, Murder, why is your armor so low? Every single 100 clear I've seen, they've been sitting at around 8.6 thousand armor. Now for the other build that I'm going to make a planner for, I went way overboard with the armor, just because of the notes that I had to take to get to where I wanted to. So I had to think 9.7 thousand base armor with no potions on, and I had about 17,000 health. That's what I needed to do those Nightmare 100s and make them feel good survivability wise, which is why my damage took quite a hit. I didn't try the Magnum Opus in those pushing builds because you really need some key aspect changes, and it's hard to lose a slot for that extra damage. I didn't really feel like I was hitting any damage checks. So again, going through this really quickly, and I will have a in-depth planner. Skill reduction on basic skills. Bleeding, where are we bleeding from? Berserk Ripping on the gloves here. Attack speed, lucky hit chance, all very important and powerful. Iron Skin Unstoppable, you want that for sure. Relentless Berserkers, this is nice to have very high uptime. For berserking, I probably wouldn't put Edge Masters on the two-hander. This is where you would put Limitless Rage. For the 60x multiplier that I don't have, I'm just missing completely here. Then you would put Edge Masters on your second ring instead of the Shout ring because, and I guess now's a good time to go over this in case you're still confused, because I really haven't talked about it. So for Double Swing, if Double Swing damages a stunned or knocked down enemy, gain 25 Fury. So the fact that we're stunning so often makes this incredibly strong. This kind of eliminates all of our Fury issues. On top of that, it also lets us not need to rely on the awful skill Pressure Point that has such a low chance of proccing vulnerability. We can have the consistent hitting an enemy with both hits. You just have to position to make sure that they're in the, I don't know, I kind of look at it like this, kind of like I said, you're swimming through mobs. Make sure you're facing the mob and you will always hit them twice for that vulnerability window. And as long as you have rage, the uptime's 100%. 100% uptime if you have the rage to spam Double Swing. So with that, we have Imposing Presence, Rallying Cry. We only have 1 point to Challenging Shout. I'm going to do a separate video on that. If you're curious about why we're not stacking Challenging Shout points, it's not worth it in the end. And like I said, that needs a separate video because there's so much to unpack there. Damage reduction, Gutteral Yell, of course, we need that. This is where we're getting the main damage for ourselves here. 9% multiplicative close damage, increased crit rate because we're bleeding with ripping, and then Slaying Strike, a 23% injured modifier, which is incredible. It's the perfect way to execute mobs here. We have Wallop here, and then we have Concussion which is another great source of stunning. We're using 2 one-handed weapons, which gives us a higher lucky hit chance because we're hitting more often with 2 weapons. And of course, we were able to slot those stats onto the gloves here. Moving on to our legs or pants, we have Iron Warrior, Iron Skin grants Unstoppable, and 25% DR, which is huge. We already mentioned the boots with Relentless Berserkers, Edge Masters, Magnum Opus, Retribution here. You could technically go for the 80% multiplier instead of Limitless Rage on the 2-hander and just put Limitless on a 1-hander. It's going to be fine. Potentially more damage if you're basing everything off of stuns. This weapon you want accelerating on. The core attack speed, making your double swings hit faster, is why you can cast this twice per second, which just skyrockets the DPS to like unbelievable measures. If you have a group of 3 elites and you stun 1 or 2 of them, you're going to instantly delete them with accelerating because you're going to hit them 4 times in 2 seconds for up to 4 million damage, sometimes even 5 million, depending on how good your gear is. For rings, win over rings, and for the necklace, +3 wallop I would highly recommend because you're always going to be using 1 mace. Cooldown reductions required, damage reduction while whatever is required, bleeding, fortified are going to be the 2 best bets, +3 ranks of all defensive skills. You don't need it. It's another kind of overhyped thing to take on necklaces, and I believe that this is something that was like good in the early game and just no guides were updated to make this look and feel better, but +3 ranks is very overrated on the neck piece because of how strong 1 rank of Challenging Shout is, and 1 rank compared to 12 ranks, people think it's way bigger than it actually is. Which is why, quick note, the people who are clearing Nightmare Tier 100s, if you don't believe me, the people who are clearing them are taking 1 point in Challenging Shout without +3 to neck. They're taking double damage reduction rolls instead, because they did the math and they can see that there's more damage reduction to be had from double roll and just skip out on the +3. I like the +3 personally because bigger barrier, and then you take Enhanced Iron Skin. You could take Tactical Iron Skin, but for this specific build, you're not going to be running into too many survivability issues because we're about clearing as fast as possible, pumping out huge numbers. The Paragon board, you can look at it in the planner, but we'll just go over the glyphs we used here. I wish they would sort all of the glyphs used on top here. So we have Mortal Draw. These are constantly swapping back and forth between Flurry and Double Swing. So you're constantly getting that high crit chance effect, which what does crit do? It procs your accelerating on the 2-handed weapon. Ambidextrous, 1-handed weapons, very nice. We have Wrath, and as I mentioned earlier, Warbinger is... There are many builds and pushing builds this is like mediocre for. This build it's the best for, because no other build can burn through Fury as fast as this one. We have high attack speed, we're doing tons, and it just costs so much rage, you're going to insta-fortify, and you don't need any help with it. So this is the one spot where it's worth putting these extra points in, because on top of that, we're using the Magnum Opus. So usually when you don't take Warbringer, you're skipping all of these nodes because you don't really need Fury on Kill. Fury on Kill is kind of overkill. So you consider 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 nodes you normally wouldn't use, but that gets cut in half because you do want Hungering Fury all the way up to this magic node here. So you're not saving too much by skipping over Warbinger, and it's just so strong since you're burning through Fury like no other. Then we take the second maximum Fury here. We already talked about Wrath. The next one, we want to use Martial. Look at the bonus effects we get from Martial. 28% crit damage because we're using one-handed weapons. 2.8 damage reduction from close, dex, willpowers, whatever. Heavy blow is very strong. Havoc, of course, very strong. The next we have Imbiber. You're going to be healthy in the content you're doing with this type of build, unless you're doing the pushing build, which is going to look different Paragon wise, but I could not record and show you two. Let's say I had 2 Barbarians, which I'd never level up to level 100. Who am I kidding? And of course, Exploit last. So I'm curious to test this for leveling after seeing how good this is. Now there is the whole Fury issue is a thing. I get that. But after seeing how strong double swing is, you probably don't need Unbridled Rage to just pump through the campaign. But I'm going to start streaming very soon. I know people have been asking me to do it. I am going to do that. We're going to make a level 1 Barbarian. We're going to see what builds are the best. And as much as I want to sit around and theory craft, you have to just play, right? I have to just make a level 1, start testing out abilities. I have gold. I can skip the campaign like we're going to do for seasons and just figure out what feels the best and what's going to give us good results. I'm not here looking for the best results if it's going to feel terrible. No one should have to suffer through terrible gameplay just because technically the numbers say it's the best. You want to find the right balance for both of them and then pursue it from there. So that's the video on double swing. Crazy impressive. Love the playstyle. It may not be for everyone. Going to warn you, if you're a PC player, you might get carpal tunnel playing this. There's a lot of high octane gameplay, spamming abilities, spamming double swing, spamming frenzy to make sure you're keeping that damage reduction up at all times or you might die. So there is that. If you don't like that, this build may not be for you, but it's fun. If you have the gold, you're willing to swap, it's probably worth testing just to see if it fits for you, because that's the purpose of this preseason. Farming gold, not necessarily pushing to 100. I don't really know why people are doing that. But the main purpose, I'm not even taking Tempered Fury, so this is actually an error. I'm glad I caught this on stream here. So we're missing damage. So we would take out 3 points here, or I don't even, yeah, 3 points there. We would put 3 points into Tempered Fury. So that's, okay. So I did a 4.7 million crit. I misplaced those where I only needed 1 point, just 1 point into Rallying Cry. We get 3 from the neck as we discussed before. So now we're talking about a high threshold after this small change that I made that I overlooked for some reason. We can be critting for 7 million per weapon per swing, which increases the thumbnail, which says otherwise. I think the thumbnail is going to say 12 million DPS. Now we're doing 7 is 14, 20 million DPS with Limitless Rage. With this addition to Tempered Fury here, that's insane damage. Like, that's just insane damage. So yeah, granted it's not a pushing build. I'm sure there are going to be ways to get a Magnum Opus into the higher end pushing builds. I don't know what it's going to be personally. I have not been playing double swing for 2 weeks. I've been studying the builds by the Koreans who have cleared this multiple times with this. I went to their forums, I translated their forums with Google, I read their, they have some really in-depth info on double swing. A few things where I don't think their testing was correct. I don't think they have the proper numbers for the damage reduction. Like, some of them weren't taking Gutteral Yell, and we've already established that this is the second best behind Challenging Shout for damage reduction. They are putting too much stock into abilities like this. Invigorating Fury. Yes, this is a big heal for us, but to sacrifice 12% damage reduction, that's an AoE, right? As far as your shouts go, that's where this applies. There's no situation in pushing where that's going to be valued high. Another thing is, the people pushing double swing, they were doing the typical dungeons. They weren't testing new dungeons like, for example, Abandoned Mineworks, like I attempted to. They were kind of sticking to the more comfortable, S-tier considered pushing dungeons that are just the easiest for most classes to do because they can be cheesed, you can skip a lot of bosses, you can skip elites, so there is that going for it as well. So to wrap up this video, the planners will be in the description, both of them, one for pushing, the one you currently see in front of you here today. Incredible damage. If you haven't gotten around to it, you have the spare gold, probably worth testing just to see if you like it. If you don't like it, it is short range and it's a very involved playstyle. Spin to win, we all know how fun that is. So that's going to conclude this video. If you enjoyed this content, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and I will see you all in the next upload.